Good evening, everyone. I would really like to welcome you all on our 26th author interaction today in the Story Behind the Story series. I am Neeta Neja and I'm the founder of Trends International, which is the platform for art, cultural, social, and literary experiences. We have recently launched the YouTube channel by the name of Trends Events. So please like, share, and subscribe so that you can watch all the author interactions that we have had in the past, including this one today. This is very special. Today, in our renowned author series, I would like to welcome Amar Bhushan sir. Sir, most welcome on our platform today.
Thank you.
I'd like to briefly introduce you. Mr. Amar Bhushan, he's an Indian Police Services officer. He's worked mostly in the state and central intelligence services, RAW in particular, until he retired in 2005 as the chief of India's foremost technical intelligence service. After the ever gripping Escape to Nowhere and the Zero Cost Mission, Sir offers us Terror in Islamabad, which is an edge of the seat thriller that has been published by HarperCollins. In fact, we are really fortunate to have Sir discussing his book today with us. Based on the true events, Terror in Islamabad is a gripping and fast-paced thriller that will have readers turning every page breathlessly till they reach the end. I did finish it in few hours and in one go, in fact. So it is the latest in the long line of gripping thrillers from the publishers HarperCollins. It is exciting, it is detailed and told to the beating of a racing heart. This is the story of an unsung hero who's prepared to risk everything for his nation and the truth. So many congratulations for the book.
Thank you. Thank you.
So to start with, sir, most of the viewers today, they have not read the book. So coming from you, a short summary of the book without giving the spoiler, because they'll all like to go back and read the book.
Okay. It's about an officer who was posted in Islamabad.
Yes.
And, it is very usual for the two countries to post intelligence officers. And their job mainly is to collect intelligence. Now, in course of that, they often get, caught. So this officer was also apprehended. And after the apprehension, he was subjected to the brutalities that I cannot mention to you. If you read the book, because that forms a major part of my book,
Yes, sir.
then you would realize how brutal the Pakistani ISI can be. Now, the problem is that when we get hold of them in India, we only subject them to interrogation and detention.
Absolutely.
And after a few hours, we immediately inform the High Commission. But our treatment and their treatment is vastly different.
Yes, sir.
In fact, if I recall, in 1988, I think Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister. So we had got hold of a brigadier who was collecting documents from our Defense Department. And then the question was whether we should detain him, interrogate him. But the political dispensation didn't want to spoil our relationship with Pakistan. So they allowed him to quietly go. Well, this is unheard of because one of our very senior officers of the rank of the brigadier was literally sent here on stretcher. So that's the difference between when this officer came and narrated this to me.
Yes, sir.
I was quite moved. But I sat over it because, the officers have a tendency to exaggerate their sufferings and get notice of that so that, subsequently they can get posted abroad. Well, I took about 2-3 years to verify the facts. And when I was sure of it, then I pen it down. Now, will give you an idea of the treatment that we made out to the spies that we get hold of by Pakistanis. And this will also give you an idea of the job that we do in Pakistan, because the officer was an outstanding operative and he carried out numerous source operations during his tenure. This will also expose you to the fact that ISI is not all that professionally competent, because they kept chasing this man for 3 years and did not find a shred of evidence against him.
Absolutely.
So these 3 things I wanted to bring to the notice of the readers.
So right, sir.
I'm sure, you know, if the readers read it, as you said that you finished it in 2 hours, they will like reading it. And they will also like recommending it to the others. Because that basically is my idea. You know, I have fictionalized this true story, which is 80% factually true, just to make sure that readers like you and your friends who are not exposed to RNW, who have very remote interest in the security interests of the country, can get hooked onto this. Because if I write a textual account, it will go into the libraries and nobody will read it. That's why I wrote it in a fictionalized form. And I'm glad that you liked reading it. Thank you.
It's absolutely gripping thriller. I mean, I couldn't really put it down. And you're right about the tortures and everything. It is so difficult once that I've read it and I've realized that it is really heartbreaking. Absolutely. You know, when you think that it's a fiction novel, then you can still take it with a pinch of salt. But when you realize that it is 80% based on the true events, you know, it suddenly sends so much of chill up to your spine. You know, you think, but tell me, sir, I mean, you're in the best position to tell us that, you know, so much of tortures. Do you think the times have changed now? Do you think it still happens? I mean, it was really brutal the way he was really tortured, Amit Munshi alias Veer Singh.
Nothing has changed really. You know, your recent case of Kuldeep Yadav, you know, the naval retired officer who was working in Chabhar in Iran. You know, he was apprehended by the Pakistani ISI, taken to Pakistan, and you know what has happened to him.
Yes.
For which, you know, we are fighting for him in the International Court of Justice, the torture that he has gone through. And I can imagine, you know, what he must have gone through and why he's not telling us the truth and telling us what the Pakistani, no, what I was telling you that it will never change, at least in the foreseeable future. It has not changed. And you have seen it in the case of Kuldeep Yadav, who is the recent, you know, Indian officer who has literally been mauled by the Pakistani ISI, brutalized, tortured, and kept in there. And we have moved for him to the International Court of Justice. Let's see what happens. This is a normal feature. This is nothing very abnormal. But we don't behave like this. We just don't behave like this.
Absolutely. Coming back to that, I think by nature, we Indians are much better in the sense that we can't even imagine our forces doing this to them, our intelligentsia doing this to them. Because the way it's been mentioned, the way the brutal activities which happen, and the readers will find out once they read the book, it is really inhuman, totally.
It's not that, you know, I'm talking like an intelligence officer of an Indian agency, and Pakistan is our, you know, constant, you know, friction point. But, you know, the way they treat the officers, the way they treat the diplomats of the Indian embassy is highly despicable. That's not done.
when I think about that, tell me one thing, sir, if it is possible to say, I don't know how much we can discuss this. Are the spies ready for this? I mean, these officers on such a mission to safeguard their country, are they ready for such tortures? Because in the book, Amit Munshi, it seemed, I mean, because of the prayers that he used to do, because of the meditation that he used to do, he could still counter. He could still take in all the, whatever they were meting out to him. But, uh, but, but do you think they're mentally prepared? They're so strong mentally to take up all this?
99 officers cannot take on this. 99% officers cannot take on this. It's just the 1% that can take on, that can fool them, and still carry out operations the way they like and come out of it. So Amit Munshi was a rare exception. That's why you have seen, why he was picked up.
Yes.
If you saw in the build-up
Yes.
to that event,
Yes.
why he was picked up for this job.
Yeah, absolutely. And for 3 years, I mean, he did not, there was no evidence that he was leaving.
Absolutely.
So terror in Islamabad, it makes us sit up and think. And the book story really shatters several myths around intelligence operatives. So please tell us, what myths does it shatter?
People do not know the difficulties that intelligence officers go through. And they always look at the intelligence as some kind of a hallowed, persona. Something like your 007 or something.
James Bond.
Or like your, the heroes of RNAW, so-called RNAW, in the movies, in the Indian movies or in the Bollywood movies. My idea was to break that myth and tell the readers that we are just like you. We are no different than you. And we are doing such a difficult job. Unlike many others, we are unsung heroes. We don't get our honors publicly. We don't get appreciations in public. We don't share our things with family members. So it's a very lonely life. And still we carry out the job for the nation's security. So don't just go around thinking that we are some kind of a vigilante or a macho, who is masquerading, as a very powerful physical person. You can see I am a frail person, but I have carried out many operations of deadly dimensions.
I'm sure so.
So, it's a question of, and that is where, in my introduction, you have mentioned me as agent. So I also want to, clarify that we are not agents. We employ agents to do our work. So we are the operatives. We are the orchestrator of the symphony.
Yeah.
And
main directors of the orchestration.
yes, we are the directors.
So in this time of age of communications and the way things are, do you think it is important to send somebody from India for these operations? I mean, you can always have a local person doing it for you. I mean, as a layman, I'm asking you this.
It's the local person who really operates for you. You cannot operate. You are an individual, as you said, director, who is directing things. So that's an art that we are trained into. That how to pick up people, how to pick up the good characters, good actors, and give them a better script and make them play it well. So we are not agents. We are the we are the directors.
Symphony directors, as you mentioned just now.
Yes. And we have people there, and those are our agents.
It's a very, very difficult line, I would say. So tell me one thing, that your name of the book is Terror in Islamabad. So why did you keep this name? I mean, I have read the book and I'm trying to find out that, I mean, the book is primarily about Amit Munshi and the way he carried on the operations and the way his diligence and his perseverance and the way he stood up against all the brutalities. So why did you name this book Terror in Islamabad? I would like-
Actually, I had named it differently,
Okay.
but the publishers also look at many things. So they tried to reason with me, and they eventually prevailed on me that it is a better title. And I guess I have to go by them because ultimately they have to sell the book.
But it's a beautiful cover. I must show this book. This is a
Cover I had
beautiful.
approved of. They had given another cover, which I
Okay.
didn't like. So they approved this cover.
It's a fantastic cover. Sir, you've already written 3 books, right? Before this. So how do you think this book is different when compared to your other 3 books? And for how long you've been planning on writing this book?
This is my 4th book.
Yes.
And I decided to write 7 years after I retired from the service because I didn't want to write. And it's very difficult to write because we are bound by the Secrets Act. We are not supposed to reveal our operations till we are alive. So
Yes, sir.
that's the binding on us. But I read such calumny against the intelligence and particularly against me in one of the incidents in which an officer of our organization defected to the CIA, ill-informed, because the tragedy is that people know very little about intelligence working. Even today, I think they know barely 1 or 2%, because the nature of our working is very different. Even the officers who work within our system, they do not know even 10 to 15% of what the organization does. So because we work in silos, in cubicles. So this is the problem. And since you don't know, you tend to exaggerate, imagine, and speculate.
Yes.
And that is what the journalists were doing. Then, I decided to write the book. And that book was Escape to Nowhere.
Yeah. Fantastic book.
So after I wrote that book and it was received very well, then, I got interested in giving more stories. So then a lot of officers who had worked under me came to me and told me, sir, you have told your stories. What about our stories? I said, all right, you let me know. And you will not believe I got about 235 responses
Fantastic.
with a brief summary of what they had gone through and what they had done.
Hmm.
Then I started picking up one by one because I didn't want to repeat any subject. So you will find that each of my book is materially different from the other. The theme is different, the operations are different, completely.
Yes.
And then I wrote that Zero Cost Mission. Then I wrote Inside Nepal.
Yes.
And then I wrote this, Terror in Islamabad.
So how long how much time did it take for you to write this book?
I can't dictate it
Getting
to
the
anyone.
story out of Veer Singh, that would have also taken some time, several sittings. Or
This book took about 18 months,
okay,
18 to 19 months it took. Because, the age is not on my side. So, and then, I have to write it myself on computer. I cannot involve anybody else. Because initial draft has got a lot of security matters. So I have to get it over a period of time. And when I'm satisfied, and then, I send it to the publisher.
And
So
so,
HarperCollins has been very nice, very indulgent, and I hope they remain indulgent for the rest of my stories.
so books of this nature, which also involve, matters of internal security. So
Yes,
it must be, you have to really step in a very safe manner. I mean, you have to take approvals. How does it go? I mean, writing something on internal security, writing in a little bit in detail also, it's a lot of details are there. So it is normally, how does one function in matters like this and writing a fiction, which is 80% true event?
it's like moving on a razor thin, line, very sharp line.
Mm.
Since I have had a lot of experience in the security matters,
Yes.
because I headed the security division for a very long time, I know where not to trip and what not to say. It's not easy, it's quite difficult. And then I go over it. In fact, I take less time in writing and more time in waiting. And that is why my stories get delayed.
Yeah, because a person of your stature, of your seniority, I think can be the only best person to write such a story. Otherwise, I'm sure there's a very thin line between what to write and what not to let out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Because
In fact, let
it's not
me tell you
easy.
an interesting thing
Yes, sir.
that once I wrote a story, and then I asked 4 or 5 officers who are still serving to sit on it and objectively decided where they can punish me, on which count. They read each and every line and they said, "Sir, we can't find anywhere. We can't pin you down." So it takes time.
So one thing, because this is primarily about India and Pakistan, terror in Islamabad. I feel this is a very serious problem between both the countries. I know you've already discussed this, but whenever we get hold of anyone in our mission, as you said, they get it so happens they get a hold of somebody there, right? And
Absolutely.
this
Absolutely.
is it there everywhere? Does it happen in all the countries like this, or it is a common trend in India and Islamabad, in India and Pakistan, that we find?
In most countries, it happens.
Okay.
But what they do is, they talk to each other.
Mm.
The officer is withdrawn immediately.
Mm.
They express annoyance. But not this, they don't put them through torture and all that. They don't do that.
And, my thoughts also go back to accountability. In this case, in this book, we see a lot of accountability on the part of Amit Munshi.
Mm.
Do you think it's a common feature? A lot of officers serving under such dire circumstances are as accountable as him, or he was totally different from
He was
others that.
totally different. He was totally different. We have got about 10 to 15, 20% officers who are like him.
Hmm.
And they are the main backbone of the organization when it comes to the operations. Because it involves taking enormous risk, taking your life on stake, putting your life on stake. And then you must also be brilliant in planning the operations and covering your tracks. So these are not common qualities of an intelligence officer. It is very easy to be in Islamabad, spend 3 years' time, do nothing there, and come back. You will have no problems. But the question is whether you want to do that or you want to go to Islamabad to do something for your country. Not many people think of the country. Not many. Most of us think about ourselves first, our families, ourselves, our comforts. But there are a few, they are outstanding. I would recommend you to read Zero Cost Mission, particularly. Here is an officer who carries out a deadly operation without investing a single penny, taking any money from the government of India or from RNAW.
Okay.
Because you cannot have an operation without investing money. The first thing, whenever you plan your operation, the first thing is how much money is going to be spent on it. But here is an officer who did not take a penny and carried out that operation. So, I really admire that officer.
That book has two stories. I mean, I was reading a review somewhere.
Actually, the HarperCollins was toying with that idea of putting two things in one book. But it tried with two books. But I think they have done a better job by putting one story in one book.
Because that is next on my reading list. I mean,
Yes.
I was reading about it on the net and I'm getting really anxious to read it. So first I thought I'll finish this Terror in Islamabad, which I
Yes.
did.
Yes.
Next. So, one last question from my side, because there are a lot of people who want to ask you directly. I don't know why this keeps on coming back. I don't know why I go back to this torture issue only, but how long do you think a lone man, if he was not Amit Munshi, would have taken that torture that we discussed, that brutality that we discussed?
Say about half an hour.
Yeah.
Half an hour is good enough. After that, he would have told everything.
Normally that happens. This
yes.
kind of.
Oh, yes. And then, once you say everything, then you are sent back, like Amit Munshi was sent back.
Yeah, a day prior to his departure.
So I don't think anybody can sustain it for more than half an hour, at least the officer.
But it must be under some international law not to do this. I mean, are they no
Vienna Convention is there very much.
Amnesty International?
They don't care. Vienna Convention is there, which governs how the diplomats can be treated in the host countries.
Yes.
And they clearly spell out how you should treat a diplomat. But Pakistan doesn't care.
Now, there were no rules. I mean, there was nothing. I mean, it was so brutal. And I think they are very, very patient. Indians
lawless people.
This book gets you into a contemplative stage, and you feel that, yes, this is how, when you get deep into it and when you read it and when you think about it, you feel that you've done a great job, and all the officers, hats off. I mean, this is amazing how it has been.
Thank you so much. That officer, I'll convey your comments to him. He'll be very happy.
He's still in India, sir?
He is still in India.
Nothing more than that. I'll not ask more than that.
Oh.
Yes. So I'll come back again, but we have a very interesting interactive round.
Okay.
And there's some people who want to ask you questions directly. In fact, this is a very popular segment in our author interaction series. Also, I have to announce that at the end of the session, I'll also announce 3 people who are the winners of the fabulous books. They're lucky to get your book. And HarperCollins has sponsored the 3 books, 3 lovely books, Terror in Islamabad. I can say they're very, very lucky for getting these books. And now I'll also again like to request everyone to please like, share, and subscribe our channel. You can see a lot of author interactions, and soon you'll also see Sir's recorded vision there. And I'll like to request Niranjan Pandit. He's an information technologist, information IT consultant. Hello, Niranjan. Yeah.
Hello, good evening, Mr. Pandit.
Sir, it's a great pleasure to hear you, and thanks a lot for the service. Thanks a lot for all the sacrifices you have made. And it's a great honor to be part of this interaction. My simple question is, what are the changes necessary in the formal education which will encourage people to fight for their nation? Because if you look at the current education system, it is like you take your degree, do IIT. If you're too good, do your management, and then you jump the ladder and go to some other nation and take their citizenship. It doesn't matter what happens to your motherland. And on the other hand, there are people like yourself and so many other officers who are risking their livelihood, the sacrifice themselves and the family. So, what are the changes that are necessary in the education system, which will encourage people to fight for their nation, stay back and do something for your nation? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Pandit, for your sweet words. Uh, Actually, it's the aptitude. You have to have a system by which, you expose the students at a very early age also to intelligence so that, they make an informed choice. Like, we teach them mathematics, we teach them science, we teach them medicine. We should also give them an exposure of the intelligence work. Like, in the armed forces, there is an aptitude test. So you should carry out an aptitude test and give them all the options at some stage in the educational system. And if somebody likes to become an intelligence officer, he should be encouraged to go and join that. Now we have also started selecting people based on their aptitude. And because previously we used to take at random, and then we go by the recommendations of the officers, mainly, who have already served in the organization. Because they can talk to them, they can find out, and they can recommend those officers. So this is what we do. And unless, because without aptitude, you will be just like any government employee or any IIT professional. And I tell you, the one reason why I am writing this book is for you, is for people like you and professionals. And not for those who are already in the intelligence service. To know what we do and what we go through and what we can do for the nation. That is why I have chosen the medium of fiction to narrate these stories to you, so that you will read the fiction. Otherwise, you will not read the fiction. Or you will not read anything which is textual, because that you will leave it for the others to go and pick up from the library. That's the reason. So my idea is that, we have to have a system where we expose them.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Niranjan. Now we have Pranjal Kathuria. He's an avid reader. Pranjal.
Hi, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. So good to hear you. And I would also like to thank you for your service, your duty. So I would definitely read your book. I love to read books. One thing I wanted to ask is, considering your long span of experience in the police and intelligence, how has intelligence evolved over a period of time? When I say evolved, like what are the methods of intelligence? How it has evolved over a period of time, and what do you think is the future of this? Any new thing that you see? Because when we say intelligence, we think of very conventional thing, of course, which we have seen in Bollywood movies and so far and so on. So how do you think that is changing through IT or new mediums?
Mr. Kathuria, it's changing very fast, because in our time there was no cell phone. You can imagine. In our time there was no cell phone. The computer was not there. We used to have terrible communication problem. Our encryption was not of a very high standard, and communication was not there. We didn't have proper vehicles. The distances were too many, and we used to have all kinds of problems. But the only advantage was then that we used to operate sources. That was the biggest advantage. Sources means, in flesh and blood. They were our sources, the ground sources. the field sources. And they used to be very reliable. Because, they used to be the person on the ground. But by the time they would give you the information, it used to be 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. Well, since you're an avid reader, I would recommend you to read my book, Inside Nepal. You will see the difficulties I was undergoing, I was experiencing. To get hold of a simple telephone. Those days, calling your officer used to take 4 or 5 days, and you book a lightning call. That lightning call used to go in 2 hours. That's the state of affairs. Now you know that with technology, all those problems have been removed. We are depending a lot more on communication. We are depending a lot more on computers. We have got the best of the gadgets now, because by the time I was retiring, I could see the sea change that was taking place in my department. We are more comfortable. Now, we don't need sources on the ground. We don't have to expose ourselves in Islamabad or Pakistan. We know many people there. You just have to contact them. We have given them the protocol. We have given them the code. They can communicate with us without it being intercepted by anybody. So enormous technology has come into play to give us the intelligence. But one thing I must tell you, that will be still lacking, the ground sources. We are fast forgetting them, and we should not forget them, because all these intercepts can give you very little information. And the information that you will get from them is really valid and real time. So since you are an avid reader, try and read that. You will be horrified how we were constrained in communicating to our sources.
Yeah. Thank you, Pranju. Thank you. Thank you for your question. Next, we have Dia Anita. She's also an avid reader.
Hi, so good to hear you. So I actually have 2 questions. My first question is that what is the surprising thing that you discovered while you were writing the book? And my second question is that, is there anything you're focusing or working on this year that you would like your readers to know?
The surprise thing was that, how the memory came flooding in. Because when I started writing, I didn't know that. I knew only the bare sketches of the story. So, I was groping from here and there. But once I started writing, all the events started flooding in. And it appeared, that the gates of the memory had really opened wide. And lots of things were coming in. And, when the incident started coming in, then I noted it down, and then I started getting it verified. And that's how the story, was built up. And my forthcoming stories will also be very interesting if HarperCollins decides to publish them. I can assure you that.
Thank you, sir.
So I have a question from Babita Batra. In fact, she's unable to join in because of some Zoom problem. She said that, do you think someone could be a writer if they don't feel emotions strongly?
I think it's very difficult.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. Like, when the officer narrated this story to me, 4 days we sat together. And it was an emotional grind. Because 2.5 days he literally kept crying.
Oh my God.
And it was really heart-wrenching. And that's the reason, I wrote this story. Because unless the emotions overpower you, it's like the labor pain. If you don't have it, you don't deliver.
Right. Very well said, sir. And one again question from Rishika. So does writing energize you or exhaust you? You've been writing so many books. So does it energize you? What happens? I mean, when you start writing, you suddenly feel that, yes, this is the reason for me to, look forward to writing more. How does it happen, sir?
It's a very interesting question.
Yes.
I get exhausted by the time the story ends. Exhausted, not in the sense that I'm tired physically, but I'm relieved of having finished that story. That's the kind of exhaustion, relief. And the next day, I decide that I must write the other one also. And if I get the feedback, like say after the book was released, then I was waiting for the feedback. So when officers started telling me, people started ringing me up. Hey, you spoiled my late night sleep. Hey, my daughter had come, I could meet her. I kept glued to the book. What have you written? One of my chiefs read it and said, oh, since when you became such a good storyteller? I never read books. I finished it over a cup of tea. So when you start receiving that kind of reactions, then you feel like writing again. So after a gap of a month or so, then I feel recharged to write another one.
Yes,
Like, now the idea is already there. So I think I'll start writing after a month.
Fantastic, sir. Any other question? You can put it in the chat if somebody has a question, because I'm finished with my interactive round. If somebody is interested, I can. Yes, I will just, Rashmi, should I ask you the question? Yeah. She says that if intelligence has evolved digitally today, has the lawless, barbaric Pakistani style of torture evolved too, or is it still barbaric? Rashmi,
It
I
is
think.
still barbaric. Still barbaric. No refinement has come into their treatment of our people. Look at the way they behead your, army jawans. That's not the way you deal with captured soldiers. You capture them. We are also capturing the Chinese. We are at war with China. We interrogate them, boys. We feed them well, and then we return it to them. That's the way it happens. But Pakistanis, I told you, are the law unto themselves. They will behead and send their head to you. A barbaric set of people.
Totally understandable. The way things are, I hope someday we are able to improve them by our examples, because I think we are being very, very nice.
I hope so.
Sometimes one has to lead by example, but I hope across the border they also understand how we behave with our guests here, our diplomats, their diplomats in India. So that was our last question, and I would say our heartfelt thanks to you, sir, for sparing your valuable time. I know you are busy. I know you are in midst of planning your next book, and it has been indeed an informative session. And I'm sure a lot of us would like to go back and read your book. And this has been published by HarperCollins, and HarperCollins has been a great support. They've sponsored the books for the giveaway. The winners, I'd like to declare them also. I'd like to announce the winners of the book giveaways, and congratulations for having participated in the competition with a lot of enthusiasm. We got a lot of good response. We have 3 winners, Arushi, Sayantan Chatterjee, and Aparajit. Congratulations to you, all of you, for the book. And I'm sure you would just love reading it. And all others, we can always go back to Amazon and buy the book and read the book. It's a fantastic book. And thank you, HarperCollins, for the collaboration. Anything else, sir, you would like to tell as your last words to everyone present here?
No, thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you and to your friends. And I find that since a lot of avid readers are there, and even professionals like IIT boys. So it was nice to talk to them. And thank you once again.
Thank you.
And at the end, I will say that 3-4 books that I am planning to write should be more interesting.
Thank you so much, sir. All the best for your book.
The one, of course, is about an operation that went haywire from day one,
Oh my God.
and how we retrieved it towards the end.
Definitely. We'll look forward to it. And we look forward to having you once again on our session. And hopefully in the times to come, we'll have an offline session too. And so you're most welcome to come over and we'll discuss your new book. Right?
Thank you, Neetaji. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks.
you.